You're listening to the 4-Phase Cycle Podcast with your hosts, Dr. Alex and Megan of Zesty Ginger. If you're looking to naturally balance hormones and learn how to work with your body instead of against it, you've definitely come to the right place. As a duo of an integrative MD and a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and best friends, we use the 4 phases of the female cycle in combination with functional lab work and mindset practices to transform the lives of the women we work with.
We also have a whole lot of fun along the way. If you're new around here, it's best to start with season 1 before jumping around and plan to roll up your sleeves. Showing up for ourselves and enjoying our lives is what good health is all about. Just a quick reminder though, this information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making changes.
Hello. This is Alex here. Welcome to the podcast. We are so happy to have you here. And I am kicking off another little series. Now, it is hard to follow Megan's because it was so stellar. And if you haven't listened to it yet, definitely check that out because there was a whole lot of amazing stories that Megan shared that I love. I even heard a lot of them as they were happening, but to listen to that podcast series was so much fun. So go check that out. If you have listened already, you're all ready for this little series that I'm going to do. This is going to be a series of short episodes, shorter at least, and the goal is to help you identify with the way that you are being in your health journey and in your transformation of who you're becoming in life. We talk about identity a lot here, and there are patterns that we see. And we talk about patterns and strategies on the podcast a lot here. And so what we have done is distilled the 7 most common patterns that we've seen and that we see to this day being played out by a lot of people. And the goal of this is to listen along and begin to consider which one or which ones you identify with and relate to the most. They'll be coming out in a series, and as you listen along, my goal is that you begin to identify and have more insight into the patterns that are creating these outcomes that you do not want in life, or rather not creating the outcomes that you do want in life. And that can feel very frustrating. And the way that I talk about this, what I call this, is fragmentation blindness. Right? When we don't know that we have separated parts of ourselves out. And we know we're fragmented when we're sick and unhappy. And we notice that because we say, oh, well, my life over there is over there, but my life over here is over here. And they're separate. That's a big clue that you're dealing with fragmentation blindness. You can't see where the walls really are, and so it gets really confusing. What I hope to do here in this series is to create these small podcast episodes that will make it very easy to listen and consider who you are being in this process and what that really looks like, what behaviors, what kind of patterns, what is going on in life, what kind of thoughts you're having that are leading to these problems. Now, for all of this series, what are we going to do with that information, right? Because information is really important. Feedback is key to the journey, right? If you don't have feedback on how you're doing, it's really hard to become the identity that you say that you want. But where we are going with all of that is that identification, knowing what's going on with you and having that understanding, then allows you to figure out what strategies are going to work for you and what resources are actually missing from your world. What is going to be most supportive? What's going to move the needle forward? So after this series, we'll kick off our habit challenge. So it's the 5-day challenge, and it's going to be on the podcast. So if you're listening on, great. You're already going to be included in it. But there is the workbook, And when you turn in the workbook, that challenge is going from September 12th to September 16th. And then the workbook is going to be due that Sunday, and you can win $500. So really the whole point is for you to begin to use this information to get a lot more clarity about where the sticking points really are for you, and then to go directly into that challenge, get signed up, because that's when you're going to figure out what actions you want to take and how you want to actually make that happen. So this is all just going to be one big lead up to that. Go get signed up for the challenge then. So zestyginger.com/habit is how you can get signed up. The challenge is different this year, or different than when we did it earlier this year. We do our habit challenge twice. We heard you. Everybody right now is reeling from the last year or two. And there's a lot of challenges, and people are either in the category of trying really, really hard and feeling frustrated, or they're just so burnt out that it's kind of like whatever. And then there's the third category of people still trying to jump from one to the other and kind of trying to balance the two. Either way, though, we hear you and we see what's going on in the world, and you know that it's important for Megan and I to be really responsive to that. And so we're doing the habit challenge completely different. It's called the Effortless Habit Challenge, Effortless Habit Change Challenge, because what we would like to do is to show you how to use brain-based rewiring by listening and beginning to integrate and have clarity around the choices that we're making. This is going to be unlike any other series that you have seen us do before. Very, very different, and it's going to be a lot less work on your part. We got you. We hear that people are struggling, and that's why we have tools for it. We're going to essentially do them with you and take you through the process. And it really brings us a lot of joy to do that, but we also know that it's really hard struggling with all this stuff. It's just been hard. And we are of the belief that the answer is always how do we all support ourselves? How do we support each other? And this is really our solution to that. So we're so excited. Pause this, go get signed up, and then come right back. But let's start with the first kind of category people. And for this, for this series, I just want you to listen along. And I'm going to be talking through these kind of avatars, these characters that we can fall into playing, right? And the first one that I want to talk about is the knee shaker. So anyone who habitually shakes their knee under the table, you're already kind of like, ding, right? But the knee shaker actually shows up in a lot of different ways. The knee shaker is essentially categorized by someone who is living from constant fear. Now, that doesn't mean you feel fear all the time, but fear of failure, fear of hurt, fear of damage drive a lot of the knee shaker's experience. The thoughts are very much rooted in, am I doing this right? Right? Who am I to do this? What if I don't like it? What if that's not safe? What if something bad happens after it? And this is the under the table knee shaker, or the knee shaker, is really just someone who feels incredibly threatened within who they are, right? Am I right? Am I really who I say I am? Is that even the right thing? How would I know if that were the case? All of these things are a manifestation and an outflow of this fear that lives, of the fear that somehow I'm wrong, somehow I'm threatened, right? And so it comes out in living in fight or flight and living in survival mode. And this is, what problem am I dealing with today? What is the relevant thing? So you're going along one problem, then all of a sudden another one pops up. You go over there, you're like, oh gosh, I better manage this now, right? And then that one kind of is poking along, and then another problem comes up, or the old problem comes up, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to go over here now. I'm going to go back to this. And it always just feels like you're halfway living off a prayer, razor's edge of falling down into the abyss. and not being able to climb out of it, right? The fear is actually at some point I could tip and it'll be too much and there will be nothing I can do about it. So within that fear, the emotion of powerlessness, hopelessness, despair tend to be very prevalent for the knee shaker. Very often, though, the knee shaker is someone who has a fear of their emotions because it seems like they will overtake them. They don't have the power to withstand. What if I get so sad? What if I get so down? What if like this that I can't even survive that? There's a real primal fear there. And what ends up happening is that because the emotions are so triggering to people, they repress them. So the under the table knee shaker, or just the knee shaker in general, is someone that will generally play it pretty small, and they will not really be acknowledging that the amount of fear and worry, anxiety that's really happening. They definitely know it's a problem. And if you are listening to this and you're identifying this, you know that anxiety and worry is a problem for you. But do you really feel the full spectrum of the emotions that feed that? Oftentimes that's where people find the emotional home of anxiety and depression as a place to be, right? And because of the brain chemistry. And we find ourselves stuck in that kind of where the environment, our central nervous system, the brain chemistry, all are the parameters that are keeping us in this fight or flight mode, the survival, just a chronically stressed out, chronically threatened state. It's really hard to feel safe processing emotions when we feel really, really tiny, because as anybody with kids know, emotions can be really, really big, and they can come out in really big ways. That also means that the knee shaker is someone that finds it really hard to sit with other people's emotions. When other people are mad at them or upset with them or triggered by them, it's almost impossible to sit still. It feels so anxiety-inducing and so scary to have that loss of tribe and connection that a lot of times we will do kind of goofy things like not setting boundaries, being clingy, being needy, pushing people away. Some of those things can come up, though you'll hear that in particular in some of the other areas as well. But this can happen a lot in that because the knee shaker is not self-regulating, other people's dysregulation is certainly not something that feels comfortable or is even welcome. And therefore we can have a strong desire to connect with others and have a sense of belonging and be loved, and not really be able to get there, to not really feel comfortable having the kind of interactions that breed intimacy and trust at the level that we really need to feel connected to someone else. This, of course, means that all of this upregulation ends up in the physiology. And so what are some of the ways that someone can know that they're the knee shaker? By looking at what's happening in their body. A lot of times these people have higher heart rates. There's that anxiety drives a little bit of that heart rate, and that restless feeling feeds into that as well. These are people who have a hard time sitting still. They overwork, and there's lots of restlessness, so restless legs, kind of that anxiety feeling. All of those things are hallmarks. Hair falling out, low energy, no libido, low creativity. You can kind of hear a ramped up central nervous system. You've heard me talk about this before. This is living in fight or flight. This is living in survival. And of course, all of these thriving things, the libido, the fertility, the great energy, the creativity to write a book, start a podcast, do a business, whatever it is just not there because the focus is not on creation. The focus really is on survival. So with the knee shaker, you can hear there's lots of people that will identify with this. I know I certainly have. Been here. And it really creates a scenario where you feel like the world's kind of against you. Everything is just a little threatening. and interactions and health situations and money stuff and relationship stuff is always just seeming to be more powerful than us. Mercury retrograde, people will kind of loop into that. This is all hallmarks of someone who is identifying and living as that person, the knee shaker. So even though these things are not super comfortable to admit to ourselves, right? This is where Megan and I talk about how much courage it takes to be authentic and actually notice these things within ourselves. Most people are only willing to do this when they're backed into a corner. What we would like to propose is that not waiting until you're in a corner is kind of the same as when you know you're having a problem with something, not waiting for you to snap to have a conversation around boundaries and treatment and all that, right? Because when you're backed into a corner, the survival and the threat will be louder and it will be harder to see what's going on. Not impossible. We do it when it comes up. But if you are in the state of, gee, this sounds accurate, but I feel uncomfortable with this, this is where, stay tuned for day 1 of the challenge because we're going to talk about that. But really, this is where we can say, I feel the fear of this. I feel the fear of being authentic with myself. And really, fear defines courage. Otherwise, you don't need courage. And that is why when we really look at this and we say, okay, I may be, identifying in part or a lot. Megan and I were joking around that we're like, man, a lot of these avatars, we would have felt really called out. And in some ways we still do, right? And that's not bad. That's called self-awareness. That's called insight. That's called growth. To not do this is to be left to the devices of responding to the world rather than creating your own, creating who you want to be and the effect you want to have on the world. So check this out. Do a little noodling on it. I'll be back for part 2 of this, and we'll go on to another one of the avatars. Another one of the avatars is called the squirrel. So a lot of people are going to relate to that one as well. And really, besides thinking about this and considering which ones of these you relate to the most and which ones make the most sense for you, go sign up for the challenge because that's where the action's going to start next. All right. And if you feel guided to take actions around this stuff as you're identifying with these, go for it. That's awesome. That's empowerment. You got this. Megan and I are really rooting for you. I'll see you on the next episode. Have a good day.
Thanks for coming out to hang with us on the podcast. It is our goal to transform the way women are treated in healthcare. And we need your help. We need your help to get the word out. We have a lofty goal of 1 million downloads. And we know that as this podcast grows, we're going to be able to reach more women, get more amazing speakers for you, and bring the most cutting-edge information.
If you found these pod classes helpful, please take a moment to text 5 women you know the link to the series. We appreciate your help so much. Can't wait to see you next time.